what for me is amazing is how well it's put together in terms of storytelling, quite apart from the content, the layering of Ireland and the Middle East. But it's so extraordinary to look at. The camera work and the lighting is so fantastic. The pacing, the way in which the sequences move from one to the other, how one's emotions are pulled in one direction, the lightness of touch at some moment. How did the film come about from your point of view, John? I don't know the story.
When I came home, I met Johnny and obviously met up with Brian, and then, in fact, I think the scene at the end of the film where we meet at the airport, that was in Galway, and then I spent a few days with Brian. I was still very fresh, obviously he'd been home for a bit longer, and we inevitably drank far too much, and I remember sort of staggering around, and also I was very wonky, so Brian was very, very intense, and I think he was rather intense, he wanted to show me this screenplay that he and Johnny, well, Johnny was crafting it, but Brian was obviously feeding Johnny material, or Johnny can explain that. Anyway, and I remember he gave it to me and wanted me to read it, and he went up, I think he went off to the pub and left me in this remote cottage to read it, and it was absolutely extraordinary. It was just an extraordinary thing to read it. And then, subsequently, getting to know Johnny very well, and then in London, and particularly in Dublin, working on the screenplay together, and then working on endless drafts of it, and sort of honing it, I think, so that it probably reflected both of us and our memories. And it was just wonderful, and we all got on so well, and then that continued. But once you'd made the film too, that we'd see it and watch it together, and it was very special. Oh my God, that's what we must have looked like. It was because those shots, from above, of Brian, Ian, and Linus in the cell, putting on the blindfolds, the guards come in. Obviously, we were always just behind those blindfolds, and to see what it was like. That's what you created, all of you. You created something that really did. It does bring it back to me, and if it brings it back to me, then obviously it's for real.
Thank you.
I was with Brian for about 6 weeks in complete isolation. I had it from the horse's mouth, and I wrote the treatment long before Brian wrote his book. The one thing I said to him is, I won't do this if it's going to be in any way sort of anti-Muslim, anti-Arab. And he said, I'm really glad you said that, because John and I used to talk about make the film of our story. We spent hours, days, weeks, months talking about it. We both felt that very strongly. It was Brian, being a Protestant, who went over to the other side. It was these two guys having to cross barriers between themselves, and then these two guys crossing barriers with the guards. That was a very important part. I thought that was such a biblical story. It's what that always struck me as a biblical story.
I find watching myself an intolerable torture. So, I don't know. When I met Brian and I met John, they're just lovely people. I just regard that as a gift I got given. I got to meet some lovely people. I don't get into my head about their version of what I did. I have no control over them.
Did you read the books?
So I read both of the books, yeah, several times. I'm like that though, you know what I mean? And the script, all the way through to the very end. One of the things that those two people experienced, John and Brian, anybody has any real understanding of, apart from some other poor bastards who've been incarcerated, you can't empathise, sympathise, understand. You can only just listen and try and dig out some nuggets of character from that. Because my job is not to go out and be banged up and tied to a radiator for fucking years. It's just to reenact. It is just to offer an interpretation of those events, to offer a window, to offer access to that experience.
I want to thank all three of you for your part in this. Thank you very, very much. Thank you all for coming.